In the 1970s, life in rural North Karnataka moved at a deliberate, isolated pace. The morning newspapers didn't arrive until the afternoon, and the weekly magazines were always a day late, carried in by a bus that served as the village's primary link to the outside world. At the center of this world was Krishtakka. At 62, she was a formidable matriarch, respected by her family for the brilliant efficiency with which she managed a complex household. But there was a boundary she could not cross. Because she grew up in a time when education for girls was considered unnecessary, Krishtakka was functionally illiterate, unable to decipher a single printed word on her own. Her only access to the world of literature was her 12-year-old granddaughter, Sudha, who acted as her sole interpreter for everything from the news to serialized fiction. While Krishtakka held absolute authority over her physical surroundings, her engagement with any information beyond her immediate reach depended entirely on the presence of a child. Every Wednesday, that dependence focused on a single event, the arrival of the magazine Karmavira, which carried the latest episode of a popular serial novel called Kashi Yatre. The story followed an elderly woman whose lifelong dream was to visit the holy city of Kashi, but who ultimately gave away her savings to ensure a young orphan girl could afford to marry. To the women of the village, this wasn't just a story. Traveling to Kashi to worship at the Vishwanath temple was the ultimate spiritual goal, the attainment of punya, or a cleansing of the soul, that served as a life's highest achievement. Krishtakka saw herself in the protagonist. After hearing the weekly reading, she would join her peers in the temple courtyard, debating the characters' choices with as much passion as if the events were happening in her own life. During these sessions, the grandmother would drop all her work and listen with total focus. She was so invested that she eventually began to memorize the entire text by heart. This weekly ritual was more than a hobby. It was a demonstration of a profound vulnerability. One of the most respected women in the village was entirely reliant on a 12-year-old's voice to connect with her own culture. That connection was severed when the granddaughter left for a week to attend a wedding. For the first time, Krishtakka was left alone with the magazine and the story she so desperately followed. She opened the magazine and looked at the familiar illustrations, but the text remained a mystery. She rubbed her hands over the pages, trying to force the symbols to make sense, but the information remained out of reach. When the granddaughter finally returned, she found her grandmother sitting alone on the moonlit terrace in tears. It was a shocking sight. Krishtakka was a woman known for her stoicism, even in the face of hardship. Krishtakka confessed the source of her distress. She spoke of the shame she felt at her age, being unable to read a simple magazine, and the deep regret of never having the chance to attend school as a girl. She realized that the most restrictive form of weakness is not physical, but the inability to decipher and use information for oneself. She didn't just mourn her illiteracy, she moved to end it. Krishtakka set a deadline, the upcoming Dasara festival. By the day of the Saraswati Puja, she vowed she would be able to read a novel entirely on her own. Her logic was simple. If the determination is there, no obstacle is insurmountable, and age is never a valid reason to stop learning. The visual was a study in contrasts, a 62-year-old woman with gray hair and spectacles, performing the repetitive, basic drills of a primary school student. The daily grind was relentless. Krishtakka spent hours reading, writing, and reciting, with her 12-year-old granddaughter acting as a strict tutor. Overcoming decades of societal expectation required more than just interest. It required a level of discipline that ignored the traditional boundaries of age and status. On the day of the Dasara festival, the granddaughter arrived with a gift, the newly published complete novel of Kashi Yatre. In a reversal of every established social norm, the 62-year-old matriarch lowered herself to the ground and touched the feet of the young child. Traditional Indian hierarchy is built on age, where the elder is the master and the child the subordinate. To bow to someone younger collapses that social structure, but Krishtakka believed a teacher must be honored regardless of age, elevating instruction above the rules of birth. This gesture showed the highest respect isn't owed to a person's age, but to the person who provides the tools for intellectual freedom. The young girl returned the respect, touching her grandmother's feet before handing over the novel to her very first student. Krishtakka opened the book and, without hesitation, read the title, the author's name, and the publisher. The dependence that had defined her life for 62 years was gone. That 12-year-old tutor grew up to be Sudha Murty, a celebrated author and educator. Her career of teaching hundreds of students began with the woman who refused to stay silent in the face of a printed page. The pilgrimage to Kashi remained a story in a magazine. But by learning to read that story for herself, Krishtakka achieved a different kind of destination, one where she no longer needed a guide to see the world. Krishtakka proved that it is never too late to rewrite the boundaries of your own life, and that the ultimate form of self-reliance is the ability to navigate information on your own terms.